Top student expelled for cheating. What the principal missed shocked everyone. Malik sat quietly at his desk, eyes focused on the math exam paper in front of him. The classroom buzzed with the low hum of students scribbling answers, some tapping their pencils nervously against the wood. But Malik's hands moved steadily and confidently. To most, he was just another face in the crowd, a quiet kid who kept to himself and rarely spoke up. But today, everything was different. When the exams were graded and the results posted, Malik's name was at the very top of the list. Highest score in the entire class, and in a school known for its competitive students. That was no small feat. No one could believe it. Malik, the reserved boy who never joined clubs or social events, had just aced the toughest math test of the semester. His name gleamed on the board, shining under the harsh fluorescent lights. But instead of congratulations, whispers followed him down the hallways. Some students glanced his way, their eyes clouded with disbelief, and maybe something darker. How did he get such a high score? They muttered behind cupped hands. No way he's that good. Mr. Wilkins, the math teacher, watched Malik with narrowed eyes. The man was known for his strict standards and no-nonsense attitude. And Malik's top score unsettled him. There was a subtle tension in the air whenever Mr. Wilkins passed by Malik's desk, a barely concealed skepticism. Malik had noticed it too, but he chose to ignore it. It wasn't the first time someone doubted him, and it wouldn't be the last. Since middle school, he had learned to live quietly beneath the radar. He kept his head down, studied hard, and avoided trouble. But even in the calm, he often felt like an outsider, a shadow at the edges of the school's bustling social scene. After classes, Malik would retreat to the school library, his sanctuary. There, he pored over textbooks and notes for hours. The scent of old paper and the quiet rustle of pages was a comfort he never found anywhere else. But the library wasn't a safe place either. The security guard, Mr. Jenkins, often watched Malik with a suspicious gaze, questioning his presence more than he did with other students. One afternoon, Malik was deeply absorbed in solving a complex calculus problem when Mr. Jenkins approached. "Hey, Malik," the guard said, voice low and cautious. "You been here all day. You sure you belong here?" Malik looked up, meeting the guard's eyes steadily. "I'm a student," he replied simply. "I have a lot of studying to do." The guard grunted and moved on. But the lingering suspicion hung in the air like a shadow. Malik wasn't naive, he understood the unspoken rules. To some, his success was an anomaly, something that didn't fit their expectations. But he refused to let their doubts define him. One day, after the math exam results were announced, Mr. Wilkins called Malik to his desk. "I want to talk," the teacher said, voice firm but low. Malik nodded, heart steady but cautious. He followed Mr. Wilkins to the empty classroom down the hall. "I'm going to be honest with you," the teacher began, folding his arms. "Your score, it's impressive. But it's also surprising. Are you sure you didn't get some help? Maybe some extra time?" Malik blinked, caught off guard. "No, sir," he said. "I studied hard. I prepared." The teacher's eyes didn't soften. "I hope so, Malik, because if anyone's cheating, I'll find out." Malik swallowed the lump rising in his throat. He wanted to protest, to shout, but instead he simply nodded and walked away. That afternoon, whispers turned into rumors. "Did you hear? Malik cheated," some said. There's no way he could have gotten that high a score otherwise. Malik felt the weight of those words pressing down on him, heavier than any test paper. He tried to focus on his studies, but the cold stares and hushed conversations made the hallways feel smaller, suffocating. Yet in the quiet of the library, Malik kept working. Hours turned into nights as he solved problems and prepared for the next challenge. The suspicion around him was a storm, but he weathered it alone, determined not to let it break him. The morning after the test results went public, Malik's phone buzzed with messages and notifications, some supportive, many hostile. But the real challenge came not from social media or gossip, but from a summons that made his heart drop. An email from the school administration popped into Malik's inbox with a subject line that read simply, "Meeting with principal, urgent." The message was curt, asking him to report to the principal's office immediately. His pulse quickened. He'd faced suspicion before, but a meeting like this? That was different. The halls felt colder as he made his way across the school, each step echoing louder than usual. Inside the principal's office, The atmosphere was tense. The large wooden desk separated Malik from Principal Andrews, a stern woman with a sharp gaze that seemed to pierce through him. Beside her sat Mr. Wilkins, the math teacher, whose presence only added to the weight of the moment. "Malik," Principal Andrews began, her voice calm but authoritative. "We've reviewed your math exam results, and some concerns have been raised about the legitimacy of your performance." Malik blinked, struggling to keep his voice steady. "What do you mean? Your exam was too perfect," Mr. Wilkins interjected, folding his arms. "It's rare to see such flawless answers, especially from a student with your background." The words hung heavy in the air. Malik's stomach twisted. He wanted to argue, to explain the months of hard work and late nights, but no one seemed interested. "We have reason to believe," Principal Andrews continued, "that you may have had unauthorized assistance during the test." Malik shook his head vehemently. "No, I didn't cheat. I studied hard." "Malik," she said firmly, "this is a serious allegation. We must investigate further." Despite his protests, Malik was placed on immediate suspension pending the inquiry. His achievements were frozen, his reputation questioned, and the bright future he had worked so hard to build suddenly seemed fragile. Outside the office, Ryan waited anxiously. He had heard the rumors and was determined to stand by his friend. "Malik, you have to tell them the truth. You didn't cheat. I know you." But even Ryan's words seemed to bounce off invisible walls. Teachers and administrators seemed deaf to anything but their preconceived judgments. Malik felt increasingly isolated, as if the school itself was turning against him. Days passed in a blur of whispered conversations and sidelong glances. Malik's phone lit up with messages from classmates, many cold, some cruel. Yet through it all, Ryan remained a steady presence, visiting him at home, offering support. One afternoon, Malik sat alone in his room, staring at the math textbook spread open on his desk. The numbers and formulas seemed foreign, twisted by the weight of suspicion. He wondered how a school that once celebrated achievement could so easily cast doubt on one of its own. Based solely on assumptions, the suspension dragged on, and the inquiry committee, composed mostly of staff who had never taught Malik, met behind closed doors. No concrete evidence emerged, no proof of cheating was found, just murmurs and insinuations. Finally, the decision came. Malik's suspension would last for the remainder of the semester, and his exam results would be annulled. Malik sat in stunned silence. The world he had built with effort and hope was crumbling under the weight of unfounded accusations. Ryan shook his head in disbelief. "This isn't right. They can't just throw you out like this." But Malik knew the truth. Sometimes, justice wasn't about facts. It was about power, perception, and prejudice. The corridors of the school had changed. What was once a place of bustling chatter and friendly greetings had turned into an echo chamber of whispers and pointed glances. Malik's name was on everyone's lips, but not in praise. Instead, it was muttered with suspicion, sometimes with laughter, and often with cruelty. "You really think he cheated?" one student asked another in hushed tones. "Yeah, there's no way he got that score fair and square," another replied, smirking. In classrooms, during lunch breaks, and even in the library where Malik once found solace, the rumors swirled like a dark storm. Some students openly mocked him, whispering insults that stung sharper than any physical blow. On social media, the attacks were relentless. Someone had posted a picture of Malik, a candid shot from a school event, accompanied by a caption dripping with racial slurs and baseless accusations. The image quickly spread, the hateful comments multiplying by the hour. Malik's phone buzzed constantly with notifications, but instead of responding, he silenced it, tucked it away, and tried to disappear from the world that suddenly seemed so hostile. At school, he became a ghost. He avoided eye contact, skipped social gatherings, and spent his days drifting through hallways as if invisible. The laughter and whispers didn't reach his ears anymore, but they weighed on his heart. Yet, amid the growing storm, there was one person who refused to turn away, Ms. Daniels, the school's only black teacher and counselor. She had watched Malik's rise and sudden fall with growing concern. Quietly, she began to investigate, piecing together the fragments of Malik's story. She talked to students, observed interactions, and listened to the subtle undertones that colored every conversation. What troubled her most was the invisible hand she suspected in the background, The administration's silent bias. There was an unspoken message. Excellence from someone like Malik was an anomaly. A threat even, rather than a cause for celebration. Ms. Daniels met with Principal Andrews in private, raising her concerns about the fairness of the process. But her words seemed to fall on deaf ears. Met with polite nods and vague reassurances. "I worry there's a prejudice we're not addressing," Ms. Daniels said softly. "Not just in this case, but in the culture here." The principal smiled, but the tightness around her eyes betrayed her. "We're committed to fairness," she said, "but sometimes the appearance of impropriety is enough to warrant investigation." Ms. Daniels left the meeting determined. She would not let Malik face this fight alone. She began gathering evidence, documenting inconsistencies, and quietly supporting Malik from the shadows. Meanwhile, Malik's isolation deepened. At home, he closed himself off, avoiding family and friends. The silence in his room was a refuge from the chaos outside. But it was also a prison. One evening, as he stared at the ceiling, Malik wondered if anyone really believed in him anymore. Was he fighting a losing battle against a system stacked against him? But beneath the despair, a small spark of resolve remained. Somewhere, buried under the noise and hatred, was the truth, and Malik was determined to find it. Ryan's mind was restless. Watching his best friend struggle under a cloud of suspicion was unbearable. Malik didn't deserve this. He had worked harder than anyone else. And yet the school had cast him out like a criminal without a shred of proof. That evening, Ryan paced in his room, replaying the events over and over. There had to be a way to clear Malik's name. Then, a thought struck him: the school library cameras. Malik spent countless hours there, studying late into the night. If anyone wanted to prove he hadn't cheated, the library's surveillance footage would be the perfect evidence. The next day, Ryan approached Ms. Daniels cautiously. "I think the library cameras might have footage of Malik studying," he said quietly. "Maybe we can get it and show them he was working hard." Ms. Daniels looked thoughtful but nodded. "It's worth a try." Together, they went to the library after school. The librarian was surprised to see them but agreed to help. After some negotiations with the administration, they secured access to the surveillance videos from the week of the exam. What they found was clear and undeniable. The footage showed Malik arriving at the library shortly after classes ended, settling into a quiet corner. For hours, he was alone except for the occasional librarian or student passing by. He flipped through textbooks, jotted notes, and solved complicated math problems on paper. The camera caught him working late into the evening, long after most students had gone home. Ryan watched the screen in awe. There was no cheating, no shortcuts, just a boy dedicated to mastering his craft. They compiled the footage, time-stamped and carefully documented, then sent it to Principal Andrews and the inquiry committee. When the video arrived, it caused a stir. Ms. Daniels hoped this would finally put an end to the unfair accusations. But Mr. Wilkins remained unconvinced. "It's interesting footage," he said during the next meeting, arms crossed, "but it doesn't prove he didn't cheat during the exam itself. Malik could have memorized the answers or received help elsewhere." The principal's expression was unreadable, but there was a faint tightening around her mouth. The video was compelling, but deep-rooted biases still cast long shadows. Malik sat silently in the back of the room, feeling a mix of hope and frustration. Even with clear evidence, the fight was far from over. Ryan leaned in, whispering, "We're not done yet, Malik. We'll keep fighting." The school hallways buzzed with the usual mix of chatter and footsteps. But beneath the surface, a new tension was brewing. Bryce, one of the most privileged students in the school, son of a wealthy family, had started to feel the pressure. Bryce's confident swagger seemed forced these days. The rumors about Malik's suspension had created a ripple effect, and now whispers hinted that someone else might be involved. Bryce had been uneasy since the suspension, but fear truly settled in when Ryan overheard a conversation that would change everything. Ryan was passing by the cafeteria when he noticed Bryce talking quietly with a friend in a shadowed corner. Curious, and more than a little suspicious, Ryan slowed down and pretended to look at his phone. What he heard made his heart pound. "Good thing I copied Malik's paper," Bryce said, his voice low but clear. "Just tweaked a few answers so it wouldn't look obvious." His friend chuckled. "Yeah, man, didn't think it'd blow up like this." Ryan's eyes widened. Bryce had used Malik's work, not the other way around. It was Bryce who had cheated, using Malik's brilliance as a cover. But when the spotlight shifted, Bryce panicked, letting Malik take the fall. Ryan discreetly pulled out his phone and started recording the conversation. Every word, every nuance was captured, a secret confession that could clear Malik's name. Later that day, Ryan showed the recording to Ms. Daniels. Her expression darkened as she listened. "This is what we've been waiting for," she said, her voice steady but urgent. "It proves Malik's innocence and exposes the real cheater." But the timing wasn't perfect. Principal Andrews had suddenly resigned under pressure from the ongoing controversy. A new principal, Mr. Hayes, had just taken over. He was known for being fair but firm, and both Ryan and Ms. Daniels hoped he would be open to hearing the truth. Together, they arranged a meeting with Mr. Hayes. Ryan handed over the recording, watching carefully as the principal listened. When the tape ended, Mr. Hayes leaned back, his face unreadable. "This is serious," he said quietly. "If what you're saying is true, this changes everything." Ms. Daniels nodded. "Malik has been punished unfairly. We need to act quickly to restore justice." Ryan felt a flicker of hope. The tide might finally be turning. The day Malik had longed for finally arrived, the day when truth would replace suspicion. And justice would stand tall. The school auditorium was packed, every seat filled with students, teachers, and parents. The usual buzz of chatter hushed as Malik was called to the stage for the awards ceremony. But this was no ordinary event. Today, the air was thick with anticipation. For the school was about to right a grave wrong. Principal Hayes stepped up to the podium, his face solemn but resolute. "Today," he began, "we acknowledge a mistake that nearly destroyed a promising young man's future because of prejudice and assumptions." A murmur rippled through the crowd. All eyes turned to Malik, sitting quietly near the front, his expression calm but guarded. Malik has been wrongly accused of cheating on his math exam, but thanks to the courage of some brave students and staff, we now know the truth. At that moment, Ryan stood, and a hush fell over the room. He held out a phone, replaying the recording that exposed Bryce's confession. Gasps filled the air. Bryce sat frozen, his face pale and eyes wide with shock. Principal Hayes continued, "Bryce, you are hereby suspended for academic dishonesty. Furthermore, an investigation has been launched into Mr. Wilkins for his role in allowing bias to cloud his judgment." The auditorium was silent. Malik's classmates, many of whom had whispered and laughed behind his back, now stared in stunned disbelief. Malik rose and approached the microphone. The weight of the moment pressed on him, but his voice was steady and clear. "I never asked for pity or special treatment," Malik said, looking around the room. "What I wanted was fairness, an equal chance to prove myself." He paused, then added softly, "I spent countless nights working hard, not because I wanted to be better than anyone else, but because I wanted to be the best version of myself." The room remained quiet, but the silence was heavy with respect. "Don't ever judge someone by the color of their skin," Malik concluded. "The truth has a way of coming out, no matter how hard people try to bury it." As Malik stepped down, a slow but genuine applause began, growing louder and louder until it filled the entire room. For the first time in months, Malik felt seen, not just for his skin, but for his character and resilience. Outside the auditorium, Ms. Daniels smiled, proud and relieved. Ryan clapped beside her, his eyes shining with hope. The battle was over, but Malik knew the journey toward true equality was just beginning. Yet, on this day, there was victory, a reminder that courage, truth, and determination could break through the darkest clouds. Thank you for listening to Malik's story. Remember, kindness and understanding can break down walls. Let's stand together against injustice and never judge someone by the color of their skin. Stay hopeful, stay strong, and see you in the next story.